Great.
welcome everybody to a cultural journey to Germany's historic equestrian sites. That's a mouthful. And I'm super excited to welcome everybody. Um, this whole thing kind of happened because there's so much out there on riding and training and all the different, scenarios along those lines, but there's really not so much that I saw about the horse heaviness of Germany. And of course, Germany's equestrian sites. Germany is not a huge country, obviously not compared to America, but it's very horse dense. So we're just going to focus on, one of the main regions in called Baden-Württemberg, which is, if you know Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg, and then is my home Bundesstaat Rheinland-Pfalz. And the reason I say that is because the picture you see there is the castle in Rheinland, in Zweibrücken. Zweibrücken is my hometown, means two bridges, and it's actually called die Stadt der Rosen und der Rosse. So the town of the roses, we have a beautiful rose garden, and the Rosse. Rosse is an old-fashioned name for horses. And in Zweibrücken, just a little tidbit before we get started, is the Landesgestüt Zweibrücken breeds Trakehner, but it also breeds Zweibrücker. And Napoleon Bonaparte, our claim to fame, rode at Zweibrücker. So just a little snippet there. So before we get into the meat of the presentation, I'm going to go ahead and just quickly introduce myself, and then I'm going to hand it over to Marcella. So my name is Sandy Calling. I am from Zweibrücken, Rheinland-Pfalz, was raised, I don't want to say on horseback, but I started riding at the age of 5. Horses have always been a part of my life. And they come, it comes and goes. But I think for those of you who, have horses in your heart, it's just something that's there, right? It doesn't go anywhere. And so I also work with Dr. Gerhard Heuschmann in that I've been doing his U.S. clinic organizations for, I don't know, 13 or 14 years now, forever. He's become a very good friend and mentor of mine. And so I'm very, very connected in the horse world and absolutely love it. I'm an interpreter and translator by profession. I was raised bilingually, and French, just because Rheinland-Pfalz is very close to the French border. French just, was another language. But horses have always been part of my life. So I'm going to pass over the virtual mic to, I'm going to be formal, Dr. Marcella Becker, but we'll just call her Marcella, whom you see here with her two beautiful horses. So Marcella, if you just want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, that's always difficult talking about myself. But I had the horses always in my heart, but I was raised in a completely non-horsey family. And this is just something my parents didn't understand. And from our standing or whatnot, it was just not considered something that they felt like they really wanted to support. So I snuck secretly off with my little red bike, to wherever I could find horses. Of course, smelly me coming back home kind of told the whole story. So riding, so that didn't give me any consistency in riding. I was cleaning stalls or helping out and maybe got to ride around in walk 1 round. So, and then later I started once a week in a riding club with my own earned money. But in Germany, we have a saying, zu wenig zum Leben, zum Sterben zu viel, zum Leben zu wenig. Not enough or too much to die, but not enough to live. So those were my writing beginnings. And interestingly enough, when I went to study in Oregon, I went on an exchange program and then I stayed. I actually ended up starting to ride more and ride young horses, have a teacher that showed me, just to get closer with the horses. And then my classical training, I started in Oregon with Dr. Thomas Ritter, which later, when both of us were back in Germany, I continued. And Germany, in a way, is really rich in the possibilities to work with classical trainers. So I had exposure to some French school, to Portuguese school, to what is called Baroque writing here in Germany. And so, in a way, I kind of had exposure to the different classical schools, which now that I ended up being a dressage trainer myself, I find really useful because we have a lot of different types of horses that I get to teach. And I always think that the difference in the classical schools have to do with the different type of horses that they have predominantly. So in my teaching of classical dressage, I somehow just evolved into a somewhat of a seat specialist. And this is something that I've pursued further the last few years by building up a writing simulator studio, which gives students the chance, isolated in peace and quiet, to really kind of do a redoing of the seat. Very interesting process. I'm learning every day as I go. And yeah, other than that, I love teaching. I love all horses. And yeah, that's become my
That's
life.
awesome. That's become your life. Wonderful. So let's get right into it. Historical journey. So up here I have 4 pictures. A lot of you have probably heard of Gustav Steinbrecht's Das Gymnasium des Pferdes, the Gymnasium of the Horse. It's kind of like the Bible, even though it's not like a book that you read in bed at night, because reading a page is like takes me 2 years. I mean, it's very in depth. It's not an easy read, but it's definitely such a foundation. And then I have 2 pictures here of Wettjen and Felix Bürkner and Wettjen. And Wettjen and Bürkner are maybe not as well known in America, but Wettjen actually, and I'll talk about this in just a second, he came into the horse world at the age of 14, and his dad gave him his first horse. He was a cavalry captain in the reserve. So there's a lot of that cavalry, and I'll get to that in a minute. So with Felix Bürkner, whom you see next to him, he trained the German riders for the 1936 Olympic Games. He also wrote a book called, it's more like a textbook called Dressage Riding. And the 9th edition was actually published kind of recently in 1986. Not that recent, but relatively recent. And he is regarded as a writing master who really had a huge influence on writing. One thing that I actually didn't know in research, that he actually trained Egon von Neindorf, which I was actually not familiar with that. So and again, a lot of you may know Neindorf, so he was his trainer. He also trained the US military team in 48 and 52 and the English eventing team. And so that's how he gained international recognition. Bürkner, of course, and Marcella, did you want to say a couple words to Bürkner?
Um, well, what I find interesting with all those guys that were like writing between the wars and on, there was a lot of cross-pollination also with the Vienna writing school. So there was the Hanover School, there was Vienna, and these guys all knew each other. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was Bergner even. They also studied in Vienna for a while. And so they all knew each other. And yeah, they learned from each other and studied with each other.
Can you imagine just hanging out with those guys and just like having coffee with them and picking their brains? Like, so cool.
Yeah.
So it's just, and these are just 2 of the many, but true masters. And there's so many masters that, of course, other countries as well, France and Spain and whatever, but on Austria, but Germany is just so horse heavy. And then the kommentierte HDV 12. So the HDV 12 is the Heeresdienstvorschrift 12. It's the cavalry manual. It's basically Steinbrecht explained, but not explained, because it kind of gives the factual layout And there's a new version in Germany. It's not in America yet. Hopefully one day it will be. The kommentierte HDV-12. So it really explains the cavalry manual, which the HDV-12 itself is translated and available on the US market. And Dr. Hirschman, as well as Kurt Albrecht von Ziegner, did the comments on it, the explanations, I guess. And it's a really, really powerful read if you have not read it. And of course, a lot of this is horse, dressage horse heavy, but I always say that dressage is so important for pretty much every every discipline that we ride, the basics. So these are good books to read, even if you're not a dressage rider. I know these are dressage heavy, but it's not just about that. So talking about historical journey, Germany is a beautiful country. Well, I'm biased, but I think Germany is a beautiful country. And it's got a lot of tradition, but it's also got a lot of equestrian tradition. And it's made a huge impact in the world. So equestrianism isn't new. It dates back centuries and centuries and centuries. And you go back to the ancient times or the medieval period, so kind of like prehistory up until the 15th century-ish. That's when horse domestication and early use in agriculture and warfare started. The Germanic tribes utilized back in the day horses for, of course, warfare, but also for transportation. And of course, we all know about the knights, right? The knights in shining armor. They played a huge role in Germany in their, and they weren't just, the knights and their horses were, and their steeds, as we often say, it was really, they had a lot closer connection than just this is my mode of transportation. They really relied on each other. So it's really, really beautiful to think it goes all the way back there. And then Renaissance, moving forward to Renaissance in the Baroque period. So Baroque, 15th to 18th century. Advancements were incredible in horsemanship, but also in the art, the equestrian art, equestrian arts. And classical styles at that time were heavily influenced, as Marcella just briefly touched on, Italian and French schools. And the nobility, especially in aristocracy, they showcased their wealth through and status through their horses and their ties to equestrianism. So moving forward to the 19th century and modernization and industrialization, the 19th century marked a significant change in Germany as far as the horse world is concerned. So the role of the horse went more from primarily agricultural use. It went to sport and leisure. And so it was a heavy use prior to that in agriculture, and it really moved to the sport. And it became popular, especially with nobility, again, aristocracy, because horses were expensive. Horses where there was a lot of money, and the status was often connected to how many horses, what kind of horses. And so that was a very, a big, not just the jewels, like, London, the London jewels, but it was really, the horse was such a status symbol. And many Reitvereine, so like the riding clubs that are so scattered all through Germany, became very popular and just popped up everywhere. And the competitive aspect started playing a bigger role, dressage, show jumping, eventing primarily. And although the military influence, they were still used for military influence, the advancements of technology kind of it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, kind of like pushed it a little bit to the side. So we go to the 20th century, and they did still use, in the First World War, they actually still did use horses, hence Die kommentierte HDV-12, the cavalry manual, dates earlier, but it was still used, and played a decent role. But moving forward to World War II, that all kind of came to a screeching halt. And again, I'm like super happy because we know how many animals and horses were, lost during that. But during that time, what I've read like several, excerpts and books and like tidbits on it. It's really incredible how, and not just in Germany, but in general, especially in Germany, the horse and the human, the connection was so profound. It's just really, really, really powerful. So you look at the 20th century, and as the horses were being pushed out of the whole, cavalry, and then also the agricultural disciplines such as dressage, again mainly show jumping and eventing, and we look at riders that are world known. Hans Günther Winkler. So Hans Günther Winkler, on a side note, Hans Günther Winkler had a very famous horse called Halla. And Halla, there was one little story where Hans Günther Winkler rode in a competition, and he was exhausted and he had massive pain, and I forgot where it was, but he didn't think he could make it.
1956 Stockholm.
Was it
Yeah,
Stockholm? Okay.
yeah,
I was gonna say that, but I wasn't sure, so I didn't.
yeah.
So
And
Stockholm.
he had a Leistenbruch. I'm not sure what that is in English. So he actually had an injury.
And he was in a lot of pain. He was in a ton of pain. And he wasn't sure if he could make it, if he could do it. And the story goes that Hala turned around, looked at him, and said, I got you. Just hang on. And I'm getting chills just saying it. I've got you. And I actually had I actually met Hans Günther Winkler at a show, and I saw how his connection, it was just unbelievable. So Hans Günther Winkler for me has a real dear little spot in my heart. And then of course there's Dr. Rainer Werner Klimke. We all know, of course, that whole generation has, the son and the daughter, very famous, but Dr. Rainer Werner Klimke. So a lot of German equestrians just made a huge influence on the world, in the world. And what I also love about Germany is it became very, and I mean, this may sound a little negative, but it's not, it became professionalized, meaning there's strict standards, with the FN, the German National Equestrian Federation, FN, which comes from the French Fédération Équestre Nationale, which I've never really understood why but it does. FN, they played a pivotal role in standardizing training methods and promoting horse welfare. So this is something that is kind of unique to Germany. Also, a lot of you may know the books, The Principles of Riding. Well, there's actually 6 or 7 Richtlinien zum Reiten und Fahren. There's like a bunch of different books. In America, I think there's only one translated, because in Germany they also have one for breeding, one for lunging, one for carriage drive. So there's many different ones. It's just a very horse intensive, horse heavy country. And Germany remains a global leader in equestrian sports. We know that they usually oftentimes rank at the top in Olympic Games, World Equestrian Games, European Championships. And the trainers are, of course, there's always those that are not, but I'm just looking at an overview. I mean, nothing is 100% everywhere, but they do for the most part. And I talk to Gad about this oftentimes. They are known for their technical skill, their precision, and competitiveness, like Germans are competitive. So the diversification of equestrian activities really goes beyond the sport. So of course, sport, the different disciplines are pretty popular and heavy, but we also see a lot of recreational riding, not just, competitive riding. Natural horsemanship has become more popular. Of course, there's a lot of therapeutic riding, and it really shows that these activities, they really create that deep bond that Germans honestly have with their horses, more so than I've seen in a lot of different countries. And so let me move on to the next slide here. And we'll talk about some of the stud farms. So here I have pictured the Landesgestüt Marbach, which is the state stud farm in Marbach. And there are many, many, many state stud farms, though. So one of them up north, founded in 1735 by King George II of Great Britain, the Celle State Stud is one of the oldest and one of the most famous in Germany. It's in Niedersachsen. Go ahead, Marcella. You wanted to
Yeah,
say something?
if I'm just may interject, because that is really just part of the history that on the one hand, the warm blood breeding happened in all the different states since Germany was relatively late unified. So all the states had their own breed of warm blood. And through the changes in the military, where they had a cavalry, they had the big breeding farms, and they were looking for a horse that's tough, that can go long distances, that is in a way also an easy keeper, and is able to do different disciplines. So as much as I'm happy that the horses are not anymore being used for war, it actually made the horses, or the baseline for the horses that we still have today. And then the whole competitive riding started really out from officers that were kind of meeting up on Sunday or whatever and comparing, hey, what can you do? What can I do? And back to the picture where you have Bruckner and Wettjen. I mean, these guys, I don't think there are really people, we all love horses, we ride, we do. But these guys, I mean, they were jumping cross country, they were riding several horses, they were riding youngsters. They had a much more riding to be
Versatile.
done than,
Yeah.
we can
Well,
do today.
back in the day, when trying to remember, back in the day though, every dressage competition, they had a little cavaletti, a little jump at the end. A
Yeah,
Gehorsamsprung is what it was called.
yeah.
So it was, it was definitely a lot more diversified. But back to Celle, so Celle initially focused on Hannoveraner, on the Hanoverian
Hanoverians.
Hannoveraner for military purposes, like you just said. That's what they focused on. But over the centuries, the stud, it expanded its breeding programs to other warm blood breeds. For example, Holsteiner, Trakehner, and also still Hannoveraner, of course, because it's up there in closer in that area. And Celle today is really celebrated as a very famous stud farm, and its contributions to the sport horses and the breeding and the preservation of traditional German horse bloodline. So it's very, focused on that.
Well,
Um,
and just the number of stallions that they still have. I mean,
it's
when I
incredible.
lived up north, I was going to the Cellar Hengst Parade, Stallion
Yep,
Parade.
the
I was
stallion
going
parade.
through the barns. I mean, I want to say something like 80
Yeah.
stallions.
So I
Yeah,
think it's more actually. I was talking to Gad
it
about that.
might be even
Yeah,
more.
it's
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
huge, huge.
And then there's a state stud farm called Gestüt Schweiganger. So
Mhm.
that's actually a smaller one. It's not as well known. It's in
Bavaria.
Bavaria,
Yeah.
and it dates back again, going back, and this is the historical part, to the 16th century. It was actually originally a monastery stud farm, and later it was acquired by the state of Bavaria, Bayern, as we say in Germany. And again, it had a really played an instrumental role in breeding the different warm bloods, including the Bavarian warm blood and the Oldenburger. So it also today it still does a lot of research and offers a lot of educational initiatives in equine studies and husbandry. Then there's Neustadt Dosse State Stud. Again, one that's not very well known. It's in Brandenburg, which is the former East Germany, what used to be East Germany. And it has a long history of breeding for agriculture, military, and later then sporting purposes. And the Brandenburger breed, which is known for its versatility and athleticism, is, one of the horses that, or one of the breeds that is mainly bred there. And then there's Marbach. So this is where the picture
Yeah.
is Marbach. Marbach is in Baden-Württemberg. Again, it's the state that borders Bavaria to the left, so to the west. It the oldest state stud farm in Germany. It goes back to the 15th century. And it also, and I want to have Marcella talk about this for a second, it makes it one of the oldest Arabian horse breeding centers in Europe.
Yeah, which is really kind of cool. And I remember as a young girl, I was reading about them importing bloodlines from Egypt. And so I was like, getting all the books that I could get my hands on and dreaming of Arabs. The interesting thing is, it started out actually 1817 with a private Arab breeding, which was done by King Wilhelm I of Württemberg. And that was not in Marbach at the time, but in Scharnhausen-Weil. But later on, they moved basically to Marbach in 1932. What's really interesting is that, and still today, they were breeding and are breeding a type of Arabian that is really used for riding. So even though they have Egyptian bloodlines now, they have horses to ride. The stallions go in the sports. The mares are at least started under saddle and they have to pass a test. So it's really about riding Arabs. And what's also interesting is it wasn't just to breed pretty, beautiful Arabs, but those Arabs actually were used to put some nobility into the other breeds. So there are still Trakehner lines that go back to, I don't remember his name now, Arab is OX in the
Right.
thing.
Mhm.
So the Trakehner used the Arabs to get blood in there. The Zeller-Hengste, there are some stallion lines in the Hanoverian breed that also have bloodlines from the Marbacher or Weiler Arab horses in there. So there too, it's a cooperation.
So
And
you
now,
see
of
here,
course, it's there and they maintain it, and it's beautiful.
it is beautiful. And you see here, so you see the different breeds. This is a Schwarzwälder,
Yeah.
and which is the Black Forest.
Yeah.
It's like a light draft. I mean, look at it, how cute.
Oh,
And
they're
of
awesome. I
course,
was I was there in Marbach a few years ago, and we did also get to see the Black Forest horses and the stallions. I mean, you just fall in love with them.
it's so
They've got all this hair and oh,
like a
it's
big
beautiful.
halfie, like a little so
Well,
so
and they're really smart horses too. So, and I'm glad that they maintain the breed.
yes, yes, absolutely. So back to Marbach, the foundation of the stud farm is said to go back actually to all the way to 1491 to
Wow.
Eberhard im Bad, who was the first Duke of Württemberg. And
Wow.
he established this stud farm with horses near Marbach in Reutlingen and in 1491. And so he then, and this is, I mean, who knows, but that they have to know it from somewhere. But he actually is said to have brought back horses from pilgrimages to the Holy Land, and also imported them from Hungary, Bohemia, and Transylvania, Turkey,
Wow.
and Holstein. So it's interesting, right? All the way back. I mean, how predominant in the different breeds. And then in the 16th century, in 1514, the stud headquarters were moved to Marbach. Around 500 horses are housed at the stud farm.
Wow.
And the stud farms that, are adjacent to it, St. Johann Offenhausen, and there's one more, Güterstein,
Mhm.
I think. So they also, which I love, and I didn't know this in my research, according to the stud manager, the focus on the stud is really still a lot on agricultural operations. And so, and they have to feed a lot of horses, right? So they produce their feed in-house and
Mhm.
have around 600 hectare. So I don't know how much a hectare is. A hectare isn't an acre. I'm not 100% sure what the correlation is, but 600 hectares of pastures available to the animals. So can you imagine like seeing, I mean, that's just amazing. It is the largest center for the profession of Pferdewirt in Germany. The state riding and driving schools are also attached to Marbach. Now, Pferdewirt, I don't know how to actually translate that. So it's the profession of Pferdewirt. It's the profession. Do you know how to translate that?
I
No,
was just thinking, yeah. I mean, in newspeak, you would say something like a bachelor of horse management. So the people can do different focus on
emphasis.
breeding, on teaching riding, on training horses. Yeah.
So again, this goes back to the professionalism that I was talking about earlier in Germany. You know, there are different places that you can do the fit of it, but yeah, I guess it's like, it's a hands-on degree. And you're really not supposed to teach without, fit of it, right, auf Reiten, so riding and, or breeding, whatever it is that your specialty is. And then so so those are the stud farms. So Marbach again is there's many other historic stud farms all throughout Germany, but those are just I've just highlighted a couple of them. Again, we'd be here all year if we went way too deeper. So equestrianism in everyday life, in today's life, like just how it is every day. So I have some friends who went to Germany and they're like, wow, you drive through these little villages and there's a barn with an indoor arena, sometimes two and three, depending on, some areas have four and five, and there's horses everywhere, and there's like stables everywhere, and there's like riding lessons everywhere. And like you can see on this picture on the top left, okay, Ausbinde, how do you say side reins aside, but this is how I was raised. I started at the age of 5 with vaulting, which you see on the bottom right. These little
Mhm.
kids vaulting. It's so fun. It's such a great way. Actually, this horse has markings like my sonny did. And it's funny. I just saw that. So the vaulting to really you learn balance, learn feel. Then a lot of times you go to lunch line lessons, the Sitzübung, the seat, and then you go to these. And I remember, riding like you see on the top left in a 20 by 40 indoor arena in the winter. There's, when you can't go outside because it's cold and it's freezing and it's raining and it's drizzly and it's dark oftentimes, there's two in the middle that are lunging their horses. There's a couple of Privatreiter, private riders on their horse, and then there's a Schulbetrieb, a lesson with like 8 or 9 kids, all in a 20 by 40, and it works. There's no chaos. Well, there can be chaos, but for the
Yeah,
most part,
there can be.
there can be chaos. But for the most part, there's
Yeah,
not. It's like this
yeah.
understood, and again, because it's so ingrained. And then you see, here on the top right, little kids face, not face painting, painting the pony. So it really truly, the bond between Germans and their horses is it's 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 pretty special. It's pretty powerful. And it's really comes from that historical journey that obviously we just only scratched the surface because we only have, max an hour. So I didn't want to go too deep into it. And then one of my favorite things on the bottom left, you see a picture of what we call eine Reiterklause. So anytime I talk to somebody in America, they're like, what? So
What
what
is
this
that?
is, it's a little restaurant cafe, and you'll see the windows, and then you look into the indoor arena. So after your lesson or after your ride or after whatever, or parents watching their kids ride, you go into the cafe and you have a beer and a brezel or a Hagebutten tea or whatever, and you sit and you chat and you enjoy and you watch the vaulting lesson or you watch the riders or you watch whatever. So this is really, again, this just shows the connectedness of the horses and the humans in Germany. It's just a very cultural thing. And when I say, I kid you not, and it's regional. In the north, it's a lot. In Rheinland-Pfalz, it is too, which is where I'm from, but also in other areas in Baden-Württemberg, you literally can drive through villages and you'll see an indoor, or you'll see two and three. Or I know a lot of my friends in Germany, they have their horses at a Bauernhof, at like a farmer, and then they ride their horses to the indoor, to like a little, to the Verein, to the club. It's just a very, very common thing. A lot more than I would say that you see here in America. And of course, there's a big tourism. A lot of people go to Germany to ride. A lot of people, for guided trail rides, for tours, for horseback riding, but also for education. So Germany is really renowned for its comprehensive education and training programs. There's riding schools, and even like, in fact, I was at a seminar a couple years ago at the Zudermühlenhof with Gerd Heuschmann, and I'm trying to remember the name of the program, but there was a program that was being offered online. And then, of course, you had to do your hands-on stuff all around different equestrian, you know, different subjects around equestrianism. So it's very, very equine science and riding instruction and breeding and all these qualifications. And again, I know you have this in America too, but in Germany, it is just, for such a small country, it is so condensed. So equestrianism in Germany is really not just a sport or a hobby, but for a lot of people, it's truly so deeply ingrained, and it's a way of life. And it's a tradition. And you going to the Reiterklasse, Marcella and I, when we were talking about the webinar, you know on Christmas we have the Nikolaus, the Santa Claus little rides. Or we do, like, I remember we used to ride eine Weihnachtsquadrille. So a
Right,
little
right.
quadrille at Christmas time, right? And then Fasching, the kids dress up in their little Mardi Gras, like, little outfits, and then they ride in the arenas and just have fun. It's just so deeply, deeply ingrained. And I just love, love, love it. And it really transcends age. Like, it really truly transcends age. There's kids, like, you see the little ones, and then, I mean, I know 80-year-olds that still, go to their
Mhm.
horses. I mean, you look at Klaus Balkenhol, he's getting up every day, just so involved with their horses. And the infrastructure but really supports it too. So, like I said, every area, you have so much of it. So it's become really a philosophy. And the other thing is, there's many, many horse festivities all throughout Germany, all throughout the year. My hometown, Zweibrücken, not a big town. I mean, Zweibrücken is 40,000 inhabitants. It's not maybe 50 now. It's not a big town, but we had our Pferdetage, our horse days. So die
Mhm.
Zweibrücker Pferdetage, and it was just fun. You'd go, there was competitions, there was good food, and it was all revolved. We also have a racetrack. Not a big fan of the race industry, but whatever. We have a racetrack. And it's just, again, there's all these horse markets and horse fairs and just horse fun. So at this point, talking about horse training, I'm actually going to hand it over to Marcella, who is going to share with us a little bit. Well, she has a fun exercise for you and something fun she wants to share. So can I move the slide forward, Marcella?
Sure you can.
I can move the slide forward.
So I got the task to share something that I do in the studio with my students, and it's um, how to start. Basically, in when we talk about the horses, we want what in German is called Losgelassenheit. Yeah. The interesting thing is, if you look up this German word in the dictionary, you find things like composure, calmness, equanimity, placidity, or one of my favorite English words, serenity. Yeah. In equi speak, it's simply suppleness. Yeah, but what I find interesting is when we look at the wider meaning of Losgelassenheit, we're getting to the place when we use the serenity, for example, that it is a state where you do not need muscular tension. So, and we want that in the horse, and of course, we need that in our seat. So, when we do courses in the studio, we also address some issues on how do we move in our everyday life. Since, I mean, we can't do another hour of sports just so that we can sit well in the saddle, right? So it's much, much better to think about how you do things, how you do them better in your everyday life, so that when you get to your horse in the evening or whatever, you can get into the saddle and you get a losgelassen, a supple, easygoing seat. So one thing we look at is how we stand. Yeah, all of us are standing a lot, we're sitting a lot, we're walking a lot. So if you look through these pictures on the left, this is kind of, standing with a lot of tension. Sometimes, of course, people are even told on this in the saddle, chest up and hurrah. And then you see the stiffness. Yeah, especially you also see how the lumbar area is very tight, and how the sternum is tight. It doesn't even look like one can breathe. So then if you go to the next picture, that's how a lot of us spend a lot of time, like looking down into the cell phone, standing without good body organization. So that's not really useful either. And what happens very often after we stood slumped like that, if we then only open our head up, but our shoulders and our sternum is still kind of going backwards, shoulders are forward. This is something, and you can try it out on your seats. If you slump your shoulders, but open up and tense your neck, you can even feel it all the way to your lower back. So a useful thing to help you is, I call it active standing, yeah, where you figure out how can I stand, how much bend do I have in the knees, and how do I stabilize my body without muscular tension. And this is something I teach then, of course, on my riding simulator too. We need a pelvis that has relaxation, and we need a lumbar area where we give up the tension, which is a place anyway where everyday stress tends to go there. So this is something that you can actually check out in your everyday life. How do I stand when I have to stand? And how can I organize my spine to just have the natural curvature, but not extra tension? Also, I find that when I'm in stressful times, I always check when I'm driving my car that I'm not tensing up in the lumbar area. So these are little things you can do in your everyday life. Yeah, easy to do, just a little bit of mindfulness, which then helps you when you get to your horse and you get into the saddle and you have a good organization and no unnecessary tension. So
Well,
have
we
fun
know.
playing with it.
Yeah, have fun playing with it. And we know like tension, and it's so true. I mean, I actually have a standing desk, so I'm standing
Yeah.
because when I was sitting all the time, and I'm at the computer a lot, I just noticed. So I just really got a standing desk, and it's made a huge difference.
Yeah.
So that's something we can be mindful of for sure. So going back to a little bit of history, in this picture on the left, you see Hohenzollern, Schloss Hohenzollern. Hohenzollern is on top of a mountain hill, and it is really a prominent symbol of Germany's medieval architecture and history. And it had a lot of military and royal importance, but it also holds a connection to horses. So as you know, with the knights and the knights in shining armor. And years ago, the grounds, and maybe now still, I don't even know, but the surrounding forests were used for royal hunts and equestrian training. And they really emphasized again the bond between rider and horse amidst, this beautiful, I mean, you look at it, this beautiful, scenery. And I was just there, well, not just a couple years ago, I went to visit Hohenzollern. We walked up the hill and with my friend, and it's absolutely spectacular. And then located a
And
little,
it's actually a rebuild, so it's not itself super, super old, because of course castles in old times got destroyed.
right, right.
But the king's family, of course, rebuilt this thing, and that's why it looks like a dream castle.
It really does. It's
Yeah.
absolutely spectacular. And then a little, lower from the Hohenzollern, from the castle, is Esslingen. Essling is a very cute little town. It is cobblestone streets. It has the Fachwerkhäuser. They're like the timbered houses. I don't even know, like they're the Fachwerkhäuser. They have
Mhm.
that wood in
Timbered
them, the
house. Yeah.
well-preserved timber. And it really reflects the military heritage. And there were a lot of fairs, a lot of horse fairs there through ancient times, horse trades, and just, again, very connected to the horse world. And on the right, you'll see Burg Liechtenstein, not like Marcella reminded me to mention, not to be confused with the country of Liechtenstein.
Yeah.
So Liechtenstein is one is I, and so this is really a beautiful, beautiful castle. And one thing I didn't know, because I've actually been to Liechtenstein, that there's an old book, right? There's an old castle within walking distance, right? Isn't that what you said, Marcella? Like there's the old,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's some old ruins, and
ruins. Yep.
what I love about this Liechtenstein here is, I mean, you can see it that it's on sitting on a bluff, and then it goes all the way down, and it belongs to the Swabian Alp, which is not to be confused with the big Alps, but this whole area is quite interesting geologically. There are caves too, and all that kind of stuff, because it used to be actually under an ocean. And that's why you also have these, yeah, like canyons. Yeah, like
That are,
canyons
yeah,
that were
right.
underwater at some point. And this particular castle, it's not really big, but because of this location, it's pretty cool.
And it literally looks like out of a fairy tale, because it, like when you
Yeah,
look at it, it's like lifted, it's like on this little rock, and
yeah.
it's absolutely spectacular. So again, there's castles all throughout Germany. But we just, highlighted, and this in, this little tower in Esslingen, obviously in the middle, is not a castle per se, or a burg, a fortress, but again, it highlights that architecture, the medieval, the style, the horse connection, and all that good stuff. So, if and Marcella, did you have anything you wanted to add to any one of these?
With
Because
the
I know you know that
castles,
area quite well.
it's really cool because I mean, where I live, I haven't really visited them all because I have horses, so don't have time. But there are probably 20 castles that I can drive to and visit from where I live. So they're all
That's
over the place.
they're all over the place, and you live in Baden-Württemberg, so
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
not far from these areas.
yeah.
So, if any of this resonated with you and piqued your interest, we have a surprise for you. In
Ta-da.
in July, we will be going to Marbach, to Hohenzollern, to Lösdau, to various horsey and non-horsey places in Germany. And we will also have a 2-day intensive boot camp with Marcella in
Yes.
her studio. And so what's included in your, 10-day experience? So there's the 2-day exclusive rider boot camp with Marcella. 9 nights at a charming hotel in Esslingen, that we showed you. And we'll visit Hohenzollern. We will go, and I didn't talk about this, but we will go to Schwäbisch Hall, which is literally a fairy tale town.
Very beautiful. Yeah.
Absolutely. That alone is worth the trip, even though it's not horsey. Absolutely spectacular. We will go to Maba with an exclusive Prosecco welcome in the historic carriage room and a tour of Maba, all in English, so don't worry. We will go to Hohenzollern. We will go to the Burg Liechtenstein, and we will visit the Stuttgarter Reit- und Fahrverein, which is the Stuttgarter Riding Club. And we'll get a tour of the club, and we will watch some vaulting lessons from the Reiterklause. So you'll be able to experience the Reiterklause and look in and watch vaulting or riding or whatever is happening at the time. And we'll also have a private shopping experience at Löstau. Löstau is Dover Saddlery on steroids. Löstau is a fantastic tack store, but it's like several levels. It's phenomenal. And honestly, prices are a lot better. I mean, that
Yeah,
alone.
the Löstau is quite reasonable.
But
And
even
by the
that,
way, this particular Löstau is situated in such a way that the windows that have a view of the Burg Hohenzollern.
there you go. So you get a
So
view. Shopping with a view. How about that?
shopping with a view.
And you'll get, private attention there. We'll have 2 guides that will take you private transfer. And for those of you that are going to Aachen, it is literally Aachen's last day is the 7th, so it literally connects with that. And we only have room for 8 people. Just because we want to, keep it exclusive, and we just want to have fun together, and we want it to be intimate.
Yeah.
And so you can go to yourequestriantravel.com for all the details. And if you register by the 1st of March, you will get $300 off, $300 discount. There's single occupancy, double occupancy, whatever it is you prefer. Grab a friend and hop on a trip, because this is really going to be a trip of a lifetime. And what I have for you, so there's another bonus. I have a 6 weeks virtual journey throughout Germany. It's actually 7 weeks. It's on a course platform, but it's not a course. And it showcases German breeds, cultural events, language, digital downloads. It's all about horse-heavy Germany, and also teaches you a little bit about the non-horsey things. So you will get that as a bonus. And if you're interested in it and can't do the trip this time, it's $99, and you can register here, or you can send Marcella or myself an email if you have any questions around the trip. Or when you go on the website, you can also book, like there's the phone number, like a little quick if you have any questions around travel. And this is Marcella's email. This is my email. So if anybody has any questions, you can put them in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them. Or of course, you can send us an email, or just respond to the email you got, the reminder. And I will be sending out a recording as well. So you can also respond to that email. So I'm just gonna in the chat here.
I'm wondering if I should say a few things about the writing simulator that I have.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because it's a pretty unique thing. It's actually the first one in Germany of its kind. And it sticks out in its functioning because it's purely kinesthetic. And I have it now for 2 years, and the longer I work with this thing, the more I'm impressed on how relatively quickly a person is able to make some changes in how we organize our own body on this thing. People here in Germany are kind of like, well, why should I sit on a riding simulator? But it really is, it's basically a luxury because you get super direct feedback what your body is doing. And because it works kinesthetically, it's also in a way easy to find a much better organization in your body, which then you can sort of take to your horse once you felt it. We're basically doing some neurological repatterning, and we do some assistant, or additional exercises. We focus on walking, how we walk, how we use our body. And I always say there are no shortcuts in learning to ride. There really aren't. But if there's just a little bit of a shortcut, it's working with this riding simulator. Gives you a leg up, quite literally.
And I have, and I'm just putting Marcella's email in here if you have any questions specific for
Specifically
Marcella.
to that. Yes, I'm
So
happy to answer.
yep. So those are the two websites. If you want to copy them down, the first one is for the virtual journey, and the second one is for the actual trip. And then my email and Marcella's email. And if you have any questions at all, or want to hop on, see Germany, it's going to be a fun way to really explore. You don't have to worry about any of the, how to get from A to B, and how do I get from here to there, and what do I order, and where do I go? And because there's, like I said, there's going to be 2 full-time guides with you, myself included, and who will be able to, navigate the journey and answer any questions and help you out. And pretty much everything is included. Some meals are all breakfast, and the only thing that's not included is your flight. So if you want to do this and you want to say, this is for me, and I'm going to take a friend, and we're going to go, and we're going to have the 10 best days of our life, then
Go for
we're
it.
here for you. Exactly. And improve your riding, or your posture along the way. So super exciting. And thank you so much for popping on. We're happy to have had you. And if anybody has any questions, just pop them in the chat. If not, we will be in touch with a follow-up email, and you can always ask questions there as well. Marcella, anything to add before we wrap it up?
Can't think of anything right now. Come to Germany.
Yes, it's a beautiful, and July is a nice time of year too.
Yeah,
It'll be a really
normally,
nice time.
normally it's quite nice from the
Yep,
weather.
yep, it is. So thank you so much. Thank you, Marcella. It was great. And I look forward to
My
hearing from you
pleasure.
guys. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.